Dustin, welcome to Living Off Rentals.
Thanks for having me on, Kirby. I really appreciate you having me on. I love just sharing with people how, man, rental properties have literally just changed my life for the better. So thank you so much for having me on the show.
Absolutely. No, it's an honor to have you here. And just to provide a little bit of background for the listeners today. So Dustin is the host of two very successful podcasts, Master Passive Income and Successfully Unemployed. He's also the author of several books, How to Quit Your Job with Rental Properties, How to Quit Your Job with Passive Income, and Successfully Unemployed. So I'm kind of noticing a trend that really should resonate with my audience here. So, and you've got a very powerful story for how you kind of got into this. And so I'd love to, hear a little bit about that and kind of, what the genesis of this kind of life-changing lifestyle was and what kind of brought you into it.
Yeah. So when I was 37 years old, I was blessed to be able to quit my job. But I hadn't grown up always thinking that I would ever actually do that. I was always taught, just like most people, we go to school and we're taught, okay, you go to school, then you go to college and you get a job and you get a career and you eventually retire when you're old. And then you live the rest of your life on your retirement. I was always taught that. And so I was always working towards that. But at the same time, I was always entrepreneurial. So growing up, I was really entrepreneurial. I had a newspaper delivery. I'm basically a paper boy. And so I had my bicycle with bags and I grabbed the newspapers and throw and bang the garage doors with the newspaper and everything like that. So I did that. I also had a graphic and website design company. I also had a skateboard manufacturing business. I even had a pizzeria and a convenience store and other businesses because I was always entrepreneurial, but I didn't know that there was such a thing as passive income. And then I bought one rental property and I was like, yay, this is great. Like, I don't do anything. I still make money. That's great. I should get more, but I kind of put it off. So from there, I was still working a regular 9-to-5 job. And so I got to tell you this one quick story that really just catapulted me into really making sure that I'm going to do this business, real estate investing business. And so when I was working my job, I was working for the county government in California for one of the counties there. And regular 9-to-5 job, sat down at the desk every single day. I was doing IT work. And so my wife and I started having kids after we got married. And then after we had our fourth child, I went on to paternity leave. And so I went on paternity leave. That's where the dad stays home with the mom and bonds with the baby, changes poopy diapers, all that good stuff. And then after I get back that same week on a Friday at 3:30 in the afternoon on that Friday, I get a call from my boss's secretary, like the top dog. And she calls me and says, hey, Dustin, would you please come to the boss's office? And I said, sure. Then I hung up the phone and I stopped there for a second. I sat there in my chair. I started thinking, why would they be calling me to his office? Like, this isn't normal. This is weird. Like, what could they be calling me for?
To welcome you back after paternity.
You would think they would have done that Monday or Tuesday, but no, it wasn't. So as I'm sitting there, I'm thinking about 1 or 2 months prior that there had been some rumors or some rumblings going on that there potentially could be layoffs in the county because the whole county was getting low on money. And I immediately shook that off. I was like, no way, I have so much seniority. I've been here for, 13, 14 years now. I get raises all the time. I have plenty of seniority. So I shook that off and I got up and started walking down the hall. Now, Kirby, as I started walking down the hall, each step felt like they turned my feet into lead bricks. And the hallway, even though it was short, seemed like it got longer and longer every single step that I took because the weight of possibly losing my job was really weighing on me, like the world was on my shoulders. And as I get past the hallway, I turn the corner and I see my boss's door is closed. And I see his secretary. She's looking at me and sheepishly she says, Dustin, would you please have a seat? And I say, sure. And I go have a seat. And she's consoling me with her eyes and kind of just being as polite as she can because she knows everything that's going on. I know nothing about what's going on. And as I'm sitting there, I'm thinking about all this time building up this potential quote unquote career here working at the county. And then started thinking if that gets taken away from me, what does that take or mean for all of my life that I just spent working here? Then I started thinking about, oh my goodness, I got my wife and my 4 kids. If I can't feed my family, does that make me a failure as a father? Does that make me a failure as a husband? Failure as a man providing for his family? Well, as I'm sitting there, Kirby, noticeably, like really the weight is starting to come on my shoulders even more, much more so. My forehead's getting all sweaty, my hands are getting all clammy. And then the door to my boss's office opens up, and out walks a coworker, a lady with a piece of paper in her hands. And she's noticeably distraught, noticeably upset. She's not necessarily crying, but you could tell her world has absolutely been rocked. And as she passes by me, my boss says, "Dustin, would you please come into my office?" So I get up, I go into his office, and I get laid off. And remember, this is the government. Nobody gets fired or laid off from the government,
Yeah.
but I did. And so I start walking back to my office, and I sit down at my desk. I got 2 weeks left, and I realized two things right then and there, Kirby. Number one, I need to get another job. I need to be able to provide for my family. I don't have enough money to be able to do that. And so I was blessed, praise the Lord, to be able to find another job in the same county, in a different department, the sheriff's office, working IT there. Blessed to be able to work there for another, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years. And so work there, did great. Then the second thing, sitting there in my desk, I realized that I needed to make sure this never, ever happened to me again. And that I made sure nobody had the power to do this to me again. So right then and there, I realized that I needed to make sure that my value was no longer in my job. See, now what anybody would ever ask me, and everybody gets asked this question, what do you do? And so I would always answer the question, well, I work for the county, I do IT work, but what they're really asking you is, what value do you put on yourself? Now, I was putting it on my job, and I know most people do that, but what you, and everybody needs to listen or watch this, that we need to realize our value is not in our jobs. Our value is in ourselves. Mine comes from my God, my family, and myself. And so from right that then in there, sitting in my chair, I said, no longer will I ever say that I work for whatever, my job. I'm going to say I am an investor, because I knew that's what I needed to do. I just didn't realize or didn't think that I could do it necessarily. I didn't have the catalyst to get me there. When I got laid off, that catapulted me into realizing my value is so much more than anybody could ever pay me. And so everybody listen to this, you need to realize this. Your value is so much more than anybody could ever pay you. And the reason why you can know this is they're paying you just enough to keep you working without quitting, but not so much that's taking money out of their pocket. You realize this because the reason why it's called a job is it's a JOB. It's an acronym for just over broke. We're always living just over broke. Now, I'll round up the story to share this. I started working for another county department, blessed really, really well over there, started buying property after property after property, telling everybody as I was an investor. After 20, 30 properties, I realized, oh my goodness, even though I'm making $75,000 a year here, I'm losing money. And so I went into my boss, my new boss's office, great boss and everything. I handed him a 2 weeks notice, layoff notice, jokingly. I just said, boss, I'm done. I don't need to work here anymore. He says, Dustin, what are you going to do? And I said, oh, I'm not going to do anything. I got rental properties. I literally don't need to work. And as I was walking away from my last time, my job, and I work in downtown Fresno, it's about a 1.5 mile walk to get to my car because I didn't want to pay for parking. I've walked this walk 1,000 times. But if you contrast this walk from the short hallway that I walked when I got laid off, where I had lead bricks for feet, this walk, my last walk to my car, even though I'd done 1,000 times, I felt like I was walking on clouds because I knew I would never, ever need a job again. And that's all because I built my business in real estate investing and now had so many properties where I literally had all of my expenses accounted for, and they had enough money to save for investing, enough money for traveling, enough money for everything. And then I kept building my business from there. So you probably got a lot of questions. So I'll pause that story there.
I do have a lot of questions, actually. It's a great story. And what a powerful point, or I guess, transformational point in your life where you're sitting there, and you're losing your livelihood, knowing that you have kids at home. I mean, I think a lot of people kind of find themselves in that position or dread, finding themselves in that position. And so at that point, you made a decision that you're going to redefine who you are, your identity, and then you're also not going to be reliant on a 9 to 5 anymore. Luckily, you were able to find a new job to bridge the gap. But I guess a couple questions out of that. So what were the next steps once you decided that you were going to no longer be reliant on the 9 to 5? I think a lot of people have that realization, but they don't know where to go from there. And then also further down the road, how did you decide when it was time to cut the cord? Because that's another area where I get a lot of conflicting information. Some people cut it too soon, and they have to go back to work, and it's a problem for them. Other people have a small fortune that they've built, and they're still like petrified to leave their 9 to 5. So if you can kind of answer both of those, I guess it's two questions at once.
So I will definitely. I love those are terrific questions, and I'll answer the last one first. And
Okay.
if I forget the first one, remind me. But the last one is, so I waited until I literally was like, oh my goodness, what am I still doing here? Like, I can't believe I would an extra like 2 years, because it's hard to leave that W-2 job. You think it's secure because it comes every 2 weeks or so, but like my life shows, it's not secure. It could literally be taken away at any time. But even though I was like, oh man, this is hard. But here's what I did. I wanted to make sure that I had all of my expenses covered. I wanted to make sure everything was covered because I had a wife and 4 kids. I couldn't just up and leave. But I will say, though, that the sooner you leave, not saying you should, not saying anybody should jump ship or leave anytime sooner, but here's my thought. I should have left much sooner. Here's the reason why. You're spending, let's say 40, 50, 60 hours a week building up somebody else's either business or organization or whatever. You can use that much time to make money to provide for your family. If you just need to figure out how to make your mortgage payments and buy for food and all that sort of stuff, there's a lot of ways to do it. That's why I have Successfully Unemployed, that podcast that I have. That's just a passion project of mine. I interview great people who have many different ways, side hustles to writing books or whatever, to make money to provide for themselves and their family, but not work a job. And so there are so many ways to do it. So if you can quit sooner rather than later, I would say you would look back and think, man, I wish I would have quit sooner. I look back now and say, man, I wish I would have quit a year, maybe 2 years sooner. But here's one thing that I did. As an investor, I knew that I needed to get a mortgage. So I had a bunch of properties, and I was bundling 4 properties together into one loan. And if you think about the way banks think, they don't like it when you quit your job in the middle of getting a loan. And so I was like, oh man, I gotta stay here another 6 months to make sure I get this mortgage. All right, I did that. So I literally stayed another 6 months working, even though I would have quit, but I needed that mortgage. So that's another thing that went through my mind. As an investor, I want to make sure that I was getting the financing that I need. So once you quit, it usually takes about 1 or 2 years for your income from your properties to really show on your taxes to be able to get loans in the future. Because all banks really care about is that they make their money back, and they look at your history to prove that you can pay that money back. So if you can prove that you can pay that money back, I can get loans now. Plus I get business loans now, so I don't even really worry about my personal loans. Now, all that to say, when you're going to be quitting your job, my suggestion, if you're a real estate investor, get all of your financing done as best as you can, foreseeable, before you quit. So that's the answer to the second part of your question. What was your first question? I think I forgot it already.
So the first question is what the point, or what were the steps you took once you had that realization that I'm no longer going to rely on a 9 to 5 and I'm going to build my own life? What were the next steps you took to start to do that? Because I know it can be a cumbersome process.
Yeah. So here's the first thing. Well, I'm going to tell you how I did it, and this is the wrong way. So I'll quickly give you the broad overview of how I invested in real estate the wrong way, and then you won't do this. So back in 2006 is when I first started investing. And the way that I invest in real estate is I started investing in, I lived in California, but I realized, oh my goodness, I could not buy, if you remember 2006, California prices were skyrocketing, rents were low. So I knew if I bought in California, I would lose money. I would not make money in passive income. So I flew to Ohio, of all places, found a realtor and a property manager, put them together, and said, hey, let's have you manage the property, because they both had a pulse and they said they could do it. Turns out my property manager started stealing from me in like 6 months. It was horrible. And if I would have given up there, I would not be where I am today. But I knew this business could work and should work and absolutely would work if I did it right. Now, that's the wrong way that I did. I just found 2 people that said they were. But the right way is to build the business first. Now, this is what I do in every new area of the country that I invest. I invest in Texas, Ohio, and Arizona now. I have students that literally invest all over the country as well. But we build the business first. So when you ask, what are the steps to actually quit that 9 to 5? Number 1, we need to build the business. But before I get into building business, this is how we make sure that we have enough money to quit the job. I knew that if I bought one property that made me $250 a month. That would be $3,000 a year in passive income. That's without working. All of us would think, oh man, $3,000 extra a year, that'd be fantastic. Now, if you had 10 properties that made you $250 a month, that's $2,500 a month in passive income. That's $30,000 a year. 20 properties, that's $5,000 a month, $60,000 a year without working. You just keep doing the math. You just keep growing, but that's the minimum. I have some properties that make me $500, $600, $700, $800 a month in passive income. But that's money making without working. I did the work one time, building the business, buying the property, and now it works for me without working. And if you see in the video in the background of my kids, I'm going to give these properties to my kids. I'm going to teach them how to do this as well. So that was my idea. And we could definitely get into build the business, but I'll pause everything I'm sharing to say that that's how I did it. I knew if I buy one property equals X. If I buy 10 properties equals this, and 20 properties equal this. I just knew I needed to scale the business.
Got it. Yeah. No, that makes sense. That makes sense. I think tactically, some of the questions that people have for me a lot of times is, while I'm working my 9 to 5, how do you do this? Like, how do I've got a job that I got to go to during the day. A lot of jobs don't support your side entrepreneurial endeavors because they want you to be there for the rest of your life. So like, what would you just work nights and weekends? How would you start to build this?
So if anybody has the idea that they don't have enough time to do this, well, I'll tell you what my life was like at the time when I was building this business. So number one, I had a job, regular, 9 to 5 job, definitely a regular 9 to 5 job, working for the county government. I also had a business that it was a convenience store at the time. And so I would get to my convenience store at like 5:30 in the morning, open up the store, make sure everything's good, get the employees going, then go to my job at 7 o'clock. Then after my job, I would go back to the store, make sure everything's good, count the money, close everything out by 9 o'clock, get home. And then I had 4 kids at the time. And so I was doing that at the same time. What I would do in my lunch breaks, in my break times, my lunches and my breaks, or anytime I literally spared, or if I'm driving to and from my house, whatever it might be, I literally took every waking minute and I said, everything I sacrifice now, money I sacrifice where I don't go out to dinner or I don't go travel, time that I sacrifice now is going to pay off dividends in the future. It's delayed gratification that I realized was going to be the best thing for me. And so I said, if I put in the effort now and forego little sleep, like I love Arnold Schwarzenegger's word for sleeping. Well, if you are working so much, just sleep faster. Like, well, that's what I'll do. I'll just sleep faster. Nice. And so that's what we want to do is we want to make sure that every single waking moment, like I stopped watching TV, I stopped going on Facebook, I stopped wasting time on things that literally did not do me any good for my business. And so this is what everybody, as soon as you start thinking, my goodness, I have this, this, and this, well, more than likely you're going to be able to find some time. But yes, you're right, Kirby. There's a lot of things you need to do. It's not easy, but it's simple. This whole process of building the business or starting a real estate investing business, it's simple. Like the process is simple. It's just X, Y, Z. It's not complicated, but it's not easy. And what I love to share with all my students and everybody that I literally just give this away, I want to share with people that you can do this. Now, here's what's interesting, Kirby. I could literally teach anybody how to invest in real estate, but I can't get them over that hurdle to realize that they can do it, to put their time into actively doing it. So just like that catalyst for me was losing my job, that said, I am not going to let any more time be wasted watching TV, playing video games, whatever. I even forewent things that I really like let's say fishing or golfing. Or I said, no, I'm not going to do that because I knew I'm going to have so much more time in the future once I quit my job to do all that stuff. So like I said, when I was 37 years old, I literally quit my job and now I go golfing 2-3 times a week. I'll go fishing whenever I want. I literally can do whatever I want. So it was the delayed gratification, putting it off and following just step-by-step process. And yeah, so I'll pause everything there, but that's how I did it. And that's what I suggest for everybody.
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of people will hear that and say, well, that sounds like a terrible life. Like, you're delaying all these, things that are the reason for living, but it's temporary. Like you said, you can't make a substantial move in your life and you've got to give up good to get great. And so I agree
Well,
with
let me
you.
share. Let me share this.
Yeah.
If somebody's thinking this, that's a terrible life. Now, number one, tomorrow's not guaranteed us.
Mhm.
Obviously, right? But we know it's a proven fact. 100% of the people die, and so tomorrow's not guaranteed. And on top of that, does this sound like a horrible life where you literally work for 40 years of your life for somebody else? Then you retire at, let's say, 65 years old. You work 40 hours a week for 40 years of your life, retire when you're 65 years old, and then retire on 40% of your income. Does that sound like a great life to you? No, I'm literally 37 years old. Now, like I said, for 10 years, maybe 9, 10 years, yeah, it was rough, but I worked my tail off. Now, when I was 37 years old, I've had the best life. I traveled. So in 2019, when I quit my job, I took my family to Japan. We went to Japan for a 6-week trip. I took my dad as well. We drove 1,200, no, almost 1,500 miles around the island of Japan on the left-hand side of the road for 6 weeks. Who does that? Well, I did. And then in 2018, we went to Europe, 11 different countries on a 6-week trip with my wife and 4 kids. And then 2019, was it 2020? Well, 2019. Sorry, I'm kind of getting the years mixed up. 2019, we went to the East Coast, drove from Florida all the way up to, let's say, Washington, D.C. in New York for a 4-week field trip. We homeschool our kids. So all that to say, what sounds like a worse life? Literally working your entire life and then maybe dying, that would be horrible, or living till you're 65 and literally not having much life left or energy left to really do anything, or money.
Exactly. Yeah. It's such a change in mindset. And I think, one thing that I noticed when I was, because I invested full time, really creating a job for myself, flipping properties until I got into rentals. But when I first got into rentals, I was also offered a job at a nonprofit I was passionate about. So I came on the leadership team as I was building my rental portfolio, and I was the CFO of a nonprofit. And the thing I noticed, as you start to think differently than most people who are in a 9 to 5 and build something of your own that's supporting yourself, you carry yourself much differently at your work too. So, you're in this job that maybe you're not passionate about, or maybe you are, but you can make your own decisions a lot easier. You're not beholden to a boss. When you show up to work, you're kind of like, I'm here because I want to be here. And it's a totally different approach than that mentality of kind of living in fear that one day you're going to get the call from your boss's boss like you did. And all of a sudden, you got the pink slip and you're out on your own, and you got to figure it out from there. So I agree with you. I think it's totally worth some sacrifice up front to start to put the pieces in place. And then it pays off in the long run, big time.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. So I'm curious, you mentioned that you're in 3 different markets. So how do you invest now? How do you advise others to invest? Like how did you pick these markets, and what types of properties are you buying?
So if you remember at the very beginning of the show, I told you that I was more entrepreneurial in general. Like I just have an entrepreneurial sense. And so when I started started investing in real estate, I really implemented the business mindset, entrepreneurial mindset into real estate investing. Now, what you're going to hear, not from me, but from other people that either teach this or say they teach how to invest in real estate, I would say don't listen to them. But what they're going to say is what you do is you find a property, you run the numbers to make sure you're going to make, let's say, $50 or $100 a month, a little bit of passive income. They're going to hope for appreciation, or they say, oh, that's going to appreciate, so they're going to make some money. Then you find somebody to fix it up, rehab it. Then you find somebody to rent it out, find a tenant. Then you find somebody to manage the property. Well, in my opinion, that's almost all backwards. It's literally silly what they do. And they also tell you that property is your business. No, that's all backwards. What we do, and here at Master Passive Income, this is what I teach, and this is how I do in my business, all the 100 students that I coach. What we do is we build the business first. No matter which city we're investing in, no matter if we live in California, invest in, let's say, Texas or Arizona or wherever, if we're out of state, it doesn't matter. We build the business first. And this is what it looks like. And I'll give you an example of what building the business first, what an example looks like. So if you're going to start a convenience store, you're not going to lease a space, open the doors, and put a box of candy bars in there and hope to run a business. No, in fact, you'll go out of business in 2 seconds. No, what you're going to do is you're going to build the business first. You're going to get the gondolas. Those are the shelving units that everything goes on. You're going to get the countertops, the fountain machines, the cold storage, the cash registers, the bank accounts, the employees, your insurance too. You're going to get everything in the business before you buy any inventory. Once you have that set up, then you buy the inventory. Same thing with real estate investing. You build the entire business, and every piece of inventory is a piece of property. So like I said, your property is not your business. Your business owns inventory. So you build your business, and then you get your inventory. You buy one piece of real estate, one rental property, you put that in as a piece of inventory. You buy another one, you put that in as a piece of inventory. That's how we scale the business so well. And that's how most people lose money and can't scale, because we don't look at it like each property is our business. No, we build the business first, and then we put our inventory into the business.
Got it. Okay. And how long does that process take? I mean, is it like years that somebody's building the business and then they buy a property, or a couple of weeks, or what is it typically?
Yeah, I love that question. So I found, well, if you're doing this by yourself, like if you're just trying to, research online and listen to some podcasts and stuff, it's going to take longer just because you're trying to piece this all together. But if you have somebody like Kirby showing you how to do it, or myself or somebody that's showing you, they're going to, streamline lots of stuff. So for my students, what I found when I'm coaching them, usually by month one, they've learned how to build a business. Because here's what's crazy, Kirby. So I give, like in my podcast, Master Passive Income, my YouTube channel, it's literally just, I don't interview anybody. It's just literally me teaching how to do this real estate investing stuff. It's like 20%. As much as I give, it's only 20% of everything that you need to know to build the business. The rest is in my courses and coaching and everything, but I just don't have enough time to give away everything. So what I do is I teach everybody in the courses and coaching that I have, and it usually takes them a month to digest the rest of all that content. Then the next month, once they got that understanding and education, next month they're building the business. Usually by the second month is finished, they have the education and the business built. Usually by the third month, they're having deals sent to them, because that's another part of the building business is we have other people send us deals. And also another part of the business, having other people lend us money, their money, private money, all that sort of stuff. And so we build the business so that by the third month, we're hopefully having deals flowing in, and we have money ready for us to invest. So I would say usually we should be putting in offers by the third month, at least that's how my students are.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. And everyone defines deals differently. I like asking people on this podcast, what's a deal to you? Because it's so different for different people. So
absolutely
for you, then what constitutes a deal? What are you going after, or what are most of your students maybe going after as well?
I love, two things. Three things. Number one, I don't invest for appreciation. Appreciation is great, but I'm going to hold on these properties. If you see, like you said, the kids in my background, this is generational wealth. I'm literally going to be passing this down. Hopefully they're going to be passing down their kids, because we just make passive income. We just don't work and we make money. Another thing is what we invest for is for passive income. So we don't invest for appreciation. We do invest for passive income. So what a deal looks like is $250 a month in passive income at the minimum. I have some properties making me $500, $600, like I said, $700, $800 a month in passive income. In fact, the homes that I bought in 2006 that were kind of shaky back then, rent-wise, now their rents are literally double. I'm like, this is great. So good. Anyways, another thing, the third thing that I would share is we love cookie cutter homes. We love buying cookie cutter homes. And when I say cookie cutter homes, is those are the homes that everybody either wants to rent or buy. We love those. We want people. So I love being proactive in my business. See, when you're reactive, I'll get to cookie cutter in just a second. I love being proactive. When you're reactive, you have two options. You have bad and worse. When you're proactive, you have lots and lots of more options. That's why we build the business first. And so in looking at the cookie cutter home, we want lots of buyers and lots of renters. This is what a cookie cutter home looks like. 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom. We can be okay with a 1-bathroom if the area, the entire city, like older homes have only 1 bathroom. It's okay, but we want 3-bedroom minimum. We never go with literally never go with the 2-bedroom. 4-bedroom, it's just a lot more square footage. We don't need to worry about that one. It's okay, but anyways, so 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,200 to 1,500 square feet, and hopefully a 2-car garage. But that makes us a $250 a month in passive income. Once you get to above 1,500 square feet, that's extra painting, that's extra carpeting, extra toilets, extra everything. We don't want that. So we want cookie cutter homes, $250 a month and a cookie cutter home.
Nice. Yeah. And it's funny because those, it doesn't sound sexy, like everyone wants to sell people on, got to do multifamily and buy 100 units or more, or you got to, buy a luxury property or something. These are you know, like gray, like boring type properties. But, if you
I'll take those
find
all day
people,
long.
exactly. Yeah. You find people who have gotten really wealthy in real estate over the years, and this is how they're doing it. It's just adding another one of these to their portfolio and having the great systems in place. So how do you mentioned that you don't manage them, but how do you manage your managers? How do you know, number one, that they're going to be a good manager? Because everyone I talk to says that they are, and they're a lot of times they're not.
I agree.
Yeah. And then how do you manage them going forward when you're in a remote location?
Yeah, so that's a perfect question, because that's what, when we build a business, the first person that we don't find realtors. That's usually one of the last ones we find. Usually people try to start with realtors, but the last one was always realtors we find. But in our business, we find our property managers. That's the number one person on our team, the number one employee, that even though not technically employees or contractors, there are managers. They manage our business. So I found more often than not, you're going to find people who call themselves property managers who just dabble in it. They're not actually property managers, or a realtor. I've been told I say realtor wrong. It's not realtor, it's realtor. But so realtors who got slow in their selling of homes or buying of homes, or helping people buy homes. So they say, well, let me just do a property management because it's probably the same thing. No, it's 100% not. In fact, I have a lot of students say, hey, I found this realtor who's also a property manager. I'm like, whoa, 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 pull the brakes on. Those are two totally different personalities. A realtor is excited about showing properties, and a realtor is, a property manager is somebody that's excited about managing, taking care of on a monthly basis. Realtor wants to get in and out, make money quick, in and out. Property manager wants to stay in. Liken it to like this. It's very, very crude example. A police officer, if they're in a patrol car, they're going around patrolling and they find a bad guy and they put him in the jail. That's like a realtor. The property manager is like the corrections officer. It's inside the jail, keeping them there. Two totally different personalities. So it's hard to mix them. So you're right. Finding a good property manager is one of the hardest things. This is when people say that this business is hard, it's not that it's not simple. It's very simple. This whole process is simple. It's just X, Y, Z. Just follow these steps and you'll do well. But it's not easy because you have to find the right people. And what you're going to find is that you're going to call, let's say, 5 property managers, and they're probably not going to call you back for some reason. More than likely, they have their name on Google or something, and they say they're a property manager. But they did that 2 years ago, and they realized, oh, it's tough. I don't like it. And they stopped it, but the number's still there. Or something else happened. But you're going to call property managers. You're probably not going to get a call back. So here's what I do, what I suggest for all my students. When you're building business, we find the right property managers and we interview them. We don't send them an email for the interview. We don't text them for the interview. We call them on the phone and interview them. Now, you're not going to say, hey, property manager, I'm interviewing you. No, you don't want to say that. You basically just have a normal conversation and see what services that they offer, how much they charge, things like that. And I have a whole laundry list of questions that we go through for all my students. We go through with all the property managers, all the questions that you should ask and all the answers that they should give if they're good. And so as we're going through those, we can weed out bad property managers very, very quickly. Number one, if they don't call you back, that's a bad property manager. If they don't have if you call them and they don't call you back before they have your money, if they're bad at communication before they have your money, imagine once they have your money, how bad it's going to be. Like, I don't need to call this guy. I already have his money. I'm not going to. No, you want to have somebody that competes for your business. It's hard to find these property managers. So here's what I like to do. If you're going to interview and call up 5 different property managers and you get one that calls you back, call 5 more. And if they don't call you back, call 5 more. If they don't call you back, call 5 more. The last thing you want is to buy a house. Because remember, like I said, all the people who teach you how to do this wrong, they'll say, find a house, run the numbers, buy it. And then if you do that, you're going to buy a house, spend, let's say $30,000, $40,000, your basically your life savings, have a property that's costing you money in mortgage. You can't rent it out. And then on top of that, add insult to injury. There you go. Tongue tied. Adding that on top of all the money you're losing, you're now having to do the work now with losing money. Might as well do all that work now before you lose that money, because what we're doing is we're hiring experts who are on the ground. Zillow's not an expert. Realtor.com's not an expert. Any website is not an app, is not an expert. Who are the experts? Those are the people that are literally working there on the ground. Property managers, wholesalers, inspectors, plumbers, roofers, realtors, all of them are the ones that are the experts. And here's the thing. I go to, and this is, I suggest for everybody, if you're going to buy a house, let's say you find a good property manager, you've already done it right. You found a good property manager. Then you find a house. Then you ask property manager, let me ask you a few questions. Number one, will you manage this house? Well, if they're not going to manage it, don't buy it. Number two, how much can I rent it for? Well, then I could figure out all my expenses. Then I could rent it for this much. Well, that difference, if I have a difference of $250 or more in passive income, then great, I can buy it. Then what's the likelihood of my tenants, being able to rent it out? What's the vacancy factor? You're going to be able to ask all these questions because these experts are in there. More than likely, you're going to say, oh man, I know that property. In fact, I have a property right around the corner. It's renting for $1,200. So we could probably, depending on how it's fixed up inside, about $1,200. Well, great. That is expert information. So absolutely, you need to make sure you find the right property managers. And if you don't find the right property manager, keep looking and keep looking and keep looking. This is by far, like I said, I had my property manager steal money from me. It was horrible. You don't want that. And you don't want to add insult to injury. I think I said it right that time. Insult to injury by having a property losing you money and have to find a property manager.
Yeah, absolutely. I wish I would have heard this advice prior to buying an 11-unit property I bought in Indianapolis many years back. Ooh. And we rehabbed the whole thing, got a great deal on it. I thought this property is going to kill it. Rehabbed it, and I, while we were rehabbing it, then I was looking for property manager, and of course they all tell you they're great. I hired and fired the first one before we were even done with the rehab, because they literally just did not do a thing to be proactive. I was expecting, I'm done with the rehab, you've got tenants lined up, and they didn't even consider it. So then hired the second. So we went through 4 property managers until finally I was like, this thing is killing me. And it should have, had it been close by, or I would have gotten a great property manager to start with, it would have been a killer deal. But I finally just offloaded it because I was like, it's just, the stress is not worth it.
Yeah.
So yeah, property management. I think people undervalue how important they are. And like you said, having them in advance, I would have done so many things differently on this property because they know the area. I was just kind of guessing at it. So
yep. And you're right. So what's interesting, on my YouTube channel, I put out videos on everything in real estate. And so my least watched videos are the ones on property managers. And I'm dumbfounded. But the ones that are watched the most are how to get money to buy them, how to find the deals, all that sort of stuff. But the property manager ones, they tank. They don't do anything. I'm like, my goodness, you guys are missing like the whole thing. If you do this wrong, sell me your property. I'll buy it from you and I'll do it right.
Yeah, exactly. I'm curious. So you mentioned you have 4 kids. I have 2 little ones myself. I have a 1-year-old and a 4-year-old. And you mentioned, generational wealth. What are you teaching your kids about money and investing at this point? Because I think that's another thing that people wonder about a lot.
Yeah, man, that's a fantastic question. So my oldest is 13. So I have 13, 12, not 11 yet, 10 and 8. And so I'm currently teaching them, and I've taught them from the very beginning, the value of money. So they don't get allowance. I personally believe it's a privilege to be in this family. And so daddy has to work to mow the lawn and all that stuff. I don't get paid for that. So we have to, anyways, they don't get allowance. When they do make money, so we homeschool. Actually, I'll take that back. My wife homeschools. I have the easy job of making money. She has the hard job of homeschooling the kids. And so when we homeschool, let's say they have 4 books a semester, math, reading, blah, blah, blah. Anytime they finish a book, that's their job right now. They get paid when they finish that book. Or if they, birthdays or Christmas or something like that, they get money. So what we do right then, so I'll get to real estate investing in just a second, but we've taught them from the very beginning the value of money. So number one, they don't get allowance. Number two, they have to use their money if they want to buy anything. Like we go to arcades or we're buying an arcade. Hey, daddy, can we have a quarter? Go like, no, you got your own money. Like, oh man, that's expensive. I'm like, I know it is. So you got to realize that. But here's what we do. Anytime they get any money, we split it up. And I've taught them from the very beginning how to percentage wise take out money. So from the very beginning, let's say they make $10. Every time they finish a book, they get $10. So 10% from the very beginning goes to God. So we go to church. And so we have them, they literally put their own tithing envelope and they give that to God. Next, 50% of the total goes into savings. We literally have a savings account. Now they've been buying silver because they see daddy buying silver. So like we do that, but we
Nice.
save, we put that money away. And when we have it in the savings account, they're like, hey, daddy, how much money did we make this month? Oh, you made 20 cents. I'm like, oh, yeah, we made 20 cents. So like, it's great. But for an 8-year-old, it's great.
Yeah.
So that's what we do. But also what we do, we don't leave them the rest of the 40%. 20% goes to mommy to pay for food, electricity, bed sheets, whatever. It helps them realize just because you're alive, you don't just get to make money. There's responsibilities that you need. So 10% goes to God, 50% goes to savings, 20% goes to mommy. They get to spend however they want the rest of the 20%. And so over time, their savings has grown. Their giving obviously has done really well. And so also helping the family, they realize that they have to provide for things. At the same time, if my kids become like when they're 20 years old and they're like, man, I used to save 50% a month, that's a lot. I'm going to go down to 25%. That's so much better than I ever saved. I saved zero. So I'm getting them off the block. Okay. Now getting to real estate investing. This is something that you brought up just a bit ago. It was the idea, you didn't say this, but the idea came to my mind was like a get rich quick scheme. This is not a get rich quick scheme. If you're wanting that, go someplace else. This is a get wealthy plan. This is a plan to get you wealthy and to be generational wealth. Where I would literally give these to my kids. In fact, they're all businesses. I could literally put them as CEOs and owners of the business. So what I'm doing now, so on top of that, you can also see how I'm making sure they're not going to be brats and trust fund babies. So they definitely know the value of money. But I'm also teaching them how to build businesses, how to invest in real estate by walking them through the entire process. And so what's great too, obviously, I've already built a business where I coach people how to invest in real estate. So they're literally going to have all this, and they're literally going to have daddy coaching them one-on-one personally. But here's another thing. If you guys see my shirt, I love the word successfully unemployed. Now, if you think of why you go to college, why do you go to college? If I offend people, I apologize that it's offensive, but this is my perspective. And this is what I'm doing with my kids. You only go to college because you want to get a better job. You want to make more money at your job. That's the only reason why you go to college. Maybe get a better education. Yeah, that's fine. But you're going to be paying $100,000. Like, well, if daddy's going to be paying $60,000, $70,000, $100,000 for your college, I'm not going to pay that. If you're smart enough to go, this is what I'm telling my kids. If you're smart enough to go to college, you're smart enough to pay for that yourself. But if you want a loan of $60,000, I'll give you a 0% interest loan for $60,000 to buy your first rental property. You make all that passive income, you pay me back my money, and then it's a win-win. So I'm teaching them. I'm not just, here's the thing. This is what I do with all my students too, is I teach them how to fish. I don't want to give them a fish. I mean, it's not like I want them to keep coming back to me. I want to teach them. So hey, Dustin, I'm done learning from you. I've done it twice now. I'm like, good, go on your own. Then just let me know how you did, because this is all I want. So now that I quit my job, this is like, well, I need something else to do. And I really love teaching people. I love serving. And so hey, let's combine them both. So that's what I'm doing with my kids, is I'm teaching them how to build businesses, how to invest their money, how to be wise with their money, all that combined.
Yeah, I think that's a great distinction between, teaching somebody to fish and giving them a fish. I have that same experience. I work with people to get their first vacation rental. And a lot of times people come to me and say, hey, here's an address. What do you think of this deal? And I'm like, no, that's not how you learn. You'll need me 60 years from now still telling you what I think of that deal. Instead, here's a calculator. Put it into the calculator. Show me the comps that you use. Tell me why you think it's a good deal. What are the positives and negatives about the deal? And go through it that way. And it sounds like you do the same thing with your kids and in the same type of manner.
And with my students. So keep going. I just want to quickly interject or add to. Yeah. I do those exact same questions to all of my students. What is a passive income? What is your property
Yeah.
manager? I literally ask questions to help them to think more rather than me just telling them.
Yeah, exactly. And that's how, like you said, you all of a sudden they've got it then. Like you do it a couple times and they don't need that assistance as opposed to you telling them the answers to the test or whatever, so that's great. I think it's great advice for people who have kids of their own. And, obviously if they're 2 years old, there's a level of teaching there. You're not going to say analyze this property, but you can start to implement some of that stuff where they can see that the way money works and the way investing works. And I think the percentages, that's awesome. Your wife's like the IRS, taking 20%. That's awesome.
Death and taxes, nothing. There's only two things guaranteed: death and taxes.
Yeah, exactly. I'm always curious as to people's goals as they evolve. And this is the last question. I don't want to take too much of your time, but initially, obviously you had that transformational moment where, you were laid off from your job and you realized that that's not the route you want to go. And you wanted to build a life of your own. So you got then several years later to a point where you could quit your job, live off passive income. But obviously, you're not going to sail off in the sunset and live on a beach. Like, margaritas get a little old after a while. So how did your goals evolve over time, and what is your new goal? Like what gets you out of bed in the morning, and what are you working toward?
I really appreciate the question. So I'll start with my original goal. So when I was 26 or 27 years old, I read the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, and Robert Kiyosaki said his goal was to retire in 10 years or be able to basically quit his job in 10 years. And I said, you know what? That's a good goal. So I made that my own goal. So when I was 26, 27, I probably was 27. I told myself, even if I don't have the businesses built or I wasn't ready, I'm going to quit. So this is a deadline. Like this is a drop dead deadline. I better be done by this. Praise the Lord. I've been 9 years. I was able to quit. So I was able to quit it before the 10 years was up. And I probably should have quit 2 years earlier, but oh well. Now, what the goal came after that was, it was rather interesting. So the first goal was substantial or tangible. 10 years, be able to quit my job. That was tangible, done, check. Then after about 2 years of not having any goals, I was like, man, this is boring. Like I need something to strive for. Then I made a monetary goal of making $1 million a year in profit, just from all my businesses combined. And then after about a year of doing that, I realized this is boring. Like that's not a drive for me. But the reason why I picked it was tangible. It was like, okay, here's a check. I can get this number. But then I realized I literally had no drive for that at all. It's not something that drives me. Like money's not something that drives me. And so here's something that really resonated with me. So I have a friend of mine. He's actually in my mastermind. He shared with me this, that in life, everybody wants to eventually have these 4 legacies built in their lives. Number 1 is a money legacy. Now, a money legacy, obviously have enough money to do whatever it is that you want. Number 2 is a time legacy, enough time to do whatever it is that you want. Number 3 is a relationship legacy. So first you have to have the money to have the time, and then time to have the relationship. The third one is a relationship legacy. And so after I quit my job, I already had the money. Then now I had the time. Then with the time, I also had the relationships because I had time to develop in the relationships. Now, after that, once I realized that $1 million a year was just boring to me, I just didn't care at all. The last service legacy, or the last legacy that I knew I needed, and he shared, and it resonated with me, was the service legacy. How many more people that I can serve? Because I had enough money, I didn't need to worry about money. Time, I didn't need to worry about time. I had enough time. And relationships, like my relationship, I'm blessed to say my relationships are really, really solid, that I now have time to serve. And now, like Jesus said in Acts, Peter says, Jesus also said that it's better to give than receive. And I found the more people that I serve, the more people that I teach how to invest in real estate, the more people that I serve at my church. I lead Awana. It's where we memorize verses. I have like 200 kids.
Yeah.
I lead that entire thing.
Awana Olympics when I was little. So
no way. Awesome. Yeah. So I lead the Awana awesome. At my church. And so I'm serving there. I'm trying now to serve as many people as possible, because I realize that as I serve more, my life gets better. People's lives get better, but it's because I had the foresight, the delayed gratification to take care of the money issue, the time issue, relationship issue. Now I can focus on service. And I'll tell you what, every property that I buy, I provide great housing at a really good price. I usually try to keep them right rents, if not a little below rents, so people stay in there longer. All the businesses that I build, I try to help it to be service oriented, showing people how to invest in real estate. One of my students started literally investing in December of 2019. Remember, 2020, February, March is when COVID hit. And so people might think, oh, it's the worst time to invest. No. He did fantastic. In 18 months, he literally bought 22 units, 11 duplexes, 22 units, and he's making like $6,000 or $7,000 a month in passive income. That's amazing. In 18 months, and he's still doing fantastic. And honestly, he even asked me the question, hey, did you ever feel like you weren't building the business fast enough? I'm like, dude, shut up. You're doing great. Yeah. You destroyed my timeline. You're doing great. But yes, I would say, yes, sometimes you start feeling like that. Anyways, long story short, to add it all back up, now my goal is to serve as many people as possible. And I would like to see 500 people coming through Master Passive Income and showing them and having 500 success stories. Now, right now, I probably have 50 or 60 success stories. My goal is to get to 500 success stories of people buying and building their business, buying the properties and building their business.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's super interesting that response, because I don't know if you've heard of Ryan Holiday. He's big into stoicism. He wrote The Obstacle is the Way. He's just a super talented author. He just has a way of really putting things so you can really understand it. And he's a big student of stoicism. And he was just talking about this on a video I was watching where, people, he was asked about, goals and how people a lot of times tie those arbitrary numbers. Like he talked about the $1 million to their goals. And it's like, where did that $1 million come from? It probably came from, you heard somebody else say they made $1 million and it seemed like, a cool goal, but there's really no real meaning to that $1 million. Like you said, it was like, well, I was pursuing it, but what's going to change in my life when I get to $1 million? So his goals are to be at the top of his game, as an author. Like that's what he loves doing still, 10 years down the road or 20 years down the road. It's to figure out what it is that drives you, not necessarily, a lot of times it's not your 9-to-5 job. It's like something else, and become the best there is at that and be able to continue to do that. And he's like, that's what leads to success. It's not the monetary stuff or the, and I think very similarly, you kind of laid out those 4 buckets of your life. And I think if you're at the top of your game in those 4 buckets and you can continue, that's a life well lived. So that's great. I appreciate you sharing that. I don't want to take any more of your time. I know you mentioned that you have lots of students. You've changed many lives at this point. If somebody is interested in working with you, how do they get in touch with you, or what's the best way?
Yeah, absolutely. So I definitely have my podcast, 2 podcasts, Master Passive Income podcast and the Successfully Unemployed podcast. You can check out both of those. But I also have a real estate investing course I just want to give away for free. I want everybody to see if they can do it and that they can do it. So if you text the word rental, RENTAL, to 33777, rental to 33777, I'll literally send it to you for free. It'll show you how to find an area of the country to invest, how to build the business first, how to make sure you're making $250 a month in passive income, and even how to scale the business to where you're growing and eventually being able to quit your job. I just want everybody to get that. Plus, you can also check me out on YouTube, Master Passive Income as well. Also, that free course, it can also be found on my website, masterpassiveincome.com/free course. It's all one word, /free course. But yeah, you can find me all those places, but I'd love to help anybody out. This is just something, it's really fun. Hopefully my energy comes across because it's just so much fun for me to share with everybody. I'll do this.
Yeah, I agree with you so much. And it's a great podcast for anyone who's looking for a good podcast on rental property investing or passive income. Definitely check both of them out. They're both great podcasts and YouTube channels. So highly recommend. Thanks a lot for taking the time today and sharing so much wisdom.
Thanks a lot, Kirby. I appreciate you having me on.